Planet Earth formed approximately 4.54 billion years ago. By accretion from the solar nebula, life appeared on its surface within 1 billion years. Planet Earth is home to millions of different species, including human beings. About 71% of planet Earth's surface is covered by saltwater oceans. Earth is the third planet from the Sun in its solar system. Earth is the largest rocky planet in the solar system by weight and volume and fifth largest of the 8 planets in size. There are 207 different nations, 203 states recognized by at least one United Nations member state, over 7 billion people, millions of languages, hundreds of different religions and beliefs. According to Forbes, in 2011 there are now billionaires from 58 countries including Peru, Morocco and Georgia. The US is still home to more billionaires than any other nation, with 425, 12 more than in 2010, despite a recession. Russia has 96, down from 101 in 2010, and mainland China has 95, down from 115 in 2010. Unfortunately, planet Earth has massive problems. Every year 15 million children die of hunger. The Asian, African and Latin American countries has well over 500 million people living in what the World Bank has called absolute poverty. Nearly 1 in 4 people on planet Earth, 1.3 billion, live on less than $1 per day. The British royal family spend £3 billion per year on security. The respected and nonpartisan Congressional Research Service estimates that the U.S. will have spent almost $802 billion on war with Iraq since 2003. There is plenty of money and plenty of food to feed the whole world. The real problem is a very small group of very rich, greedy people have control of the money. They own and control the media, using propaganda to push wars like the so-called War on Terror. They attack oil-rich countries in the name of human rights. At the same time they allow millions of children every year to die of starvation. They declare war on terror, drugs, and gangs, but still no war against poverty. Sickening billion-pound corporations like Tesco, Walmart, and Primark exploit third-world countries, using them for cheap child labor, paying as little as 7 pence per hour. Disney's best-selling Cars toys are being made in a factory in China that uses child labor and forces staff to do 3 times the amount of overtime allowed by law, according to an investigation. The undercover investigation was carried out with the help of human rights group SACOM, or Students and Scholars Against Corporate Misbehavior. One worker reportedly killed herself after being repeatedly shouted at by bosses. Disney reported profits between October and December 2011 of nearly $1.5 billion. Disney corrupt children in the West, exploit children in Asia and make billions. News Corporation push for war in the Middle East. Rupert Murdoch joined in an overcrude attempt by U.S. Republicans to force Tony Blair to accelerate British involvement in the Iraq War a week before a crucial House of Commons vote in 2003, according to the final volumes of Alastair Campbell's government diaries. News Corporation owns over 300 assets, including 20th Century Fox, Fox Broadcasting Company, British Sky Broadcasting 39%, The Times, The Sun, The New York Post, Vogue, Sky Italia, 7% shares in ITV, The Wall Street Journal, National Geographic Channel, 27% Hulu, 49% of Sky Deutschland. Instead of using News Corporation to fight poverty, News Corporation propagate and push for wars in the Middle East. Americans are tricked into thinking that they live in a free country. The land of the free actually has more than 1 in every 100 adults in jail, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. 1 in 3 black men can expect to go to prison in their lifetime. Individuals of color have a disproportionate number of encounters with law enforcement, indicating that racial profiling continues to be a problem. The elite depend on the vast majority of people to be ignorant. They keep them ignorant with TV, a poor education system that favors the upper classes. They control the entertainment industry. They are dumbing down music and TV in order to keep the masses stupid and themselves filthy fucking rich.
Where are 1% of American adults?
Oh, I imagine we could find out, couldn't we? We could use Google Earth, because some of them are quite big. There's one. He's got his own postcode.
1% of the population, which is, what's the population? It's about
300 million, isn't it?
So you're talking about between 2.5 and 3 million, say?
Jail.
Yes. G for jail. English spelling of jail, of course, but it is G for jail.
Really, that many people? 3 million people are locked up?
Well, 2.3, which is 1 in every 99.1 adults.
All of those guys there are innocent as well, because they all were arrested for having switchblades, but they've all only got one arm.
Well spotted. Proportionally, Americans are prison more than twice as many as South Africans, more than 3 times as many as the Iranians, more than 6 times as many as the Chinese. No society in history has imprisoned more of its citizens than the United States of America.
We do pretty well, though, don't we? We sort of top the European League.
We're ahead of China, Turkey and India.
Yes.
Yeah, with 148 prisoners per 100,000.
It's the 3 strikes and they're out.
That's been the problem, yeah.
I mean, a legal system based on baseball just seems bizarre.
Yes.
People don't seem to understand the law. It's all very complicated. What's simple? What do people like? Baseball. Right then. Here's the rule.
3 strikes and you're out, yeah.
Mental.
What it means is if the first 2 strikes, the first 2 crimes you're convicted of are serious enough, the third one, no matter how trivial, will get a life sentence, 25 years or more. So, for example, Leandro Andrade is serving 2 consecutive 25-year terms for shoplifting 9 videotapes.
He took 9?
Yes. Kevin Webber, 26 years for stealing 4 chocolate chip cookies. It's astonishing.
It's really stupid, isn't it? Because if you know you're on this sort of deal...
Yes.
Yeah.
Take 5.
Yes.
That is the idea.
Do another murder. Do a bank job. There's no point...
There's no point doing anything trivial. No, I know.
Get caught.
It is a bit bonkers. But the racial numbers are a bit worrying. And the gender numbers, it's 1 in 30 men aged 20 34 is behind bars. But for black males, that's 1 in 9. 1 in 9. There are more 17-year-old black people in jail than in college in America. So 5% of the world are American, 25% of all prisoners
Isn't the real
are American.
controversy with this the business end of it?
Well, that's true. It's also, as you say, right, it is a business.
Because it's not just license plate, they make loads of stuff.
Well, one of the things I should have said when talking about contraband is that you're not allowed to bring into America anything that's been made by forced labour or prisons. But in America, you can almost say, if you're so minded, that they've reinvented the slave trade. They produce, for example, 100% of all military helmets, ammunition belts, bulletproof vests, ID tags and other items of uniform, 93% of domestically produced paints, 36% of home appliances, 21% of office furniture, which allows the United States to compete with factories in Mexico because, of course, obviously the workers can't refuse to work for 25 cents an hour.
I'd very much like to say something hilarious, but something must be done.
It is.
It feels a bit more question-timey to say.
It is a bit amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's slavery by the back door.
Exactly, wasn't it?
Which is another video that I've got.
If you're in prison, is there an incentive for you to work?
You get solitary confinement if you refuse to work. Yeah, more than 1 in 100 American adults are in jail.
These wars and this misguided foreign policy, in my opinion, is a symptom of us all going a little crazy back in 2000, starting with the Republican Party. Let me just share there you go. Let me just share some thoughts on this with you, if I may. This is, war is hell. And in fact, let's go to that whole notion. Not only is war hell, but the notion of evil. We historically in the United States, maybe George W. Bush and the Republicans, just for a moment, let's just imagine that possibly they actually went to the dark side. Historically, this five-pointed star was man, right? It meant man. It's a good thing. And if you flipped it upside down, the upside down five-pointed star with the goat, with his chinny chin chin and his ears and his horns, was the sign of Satan worshippers. It was a satanic star. Now, you can see on the American flag, our stars are right side up. All across America, you'll see symbols with five-pointed stars. The stars are right side up, the man stars. But around the year 2000, the Republican Party changed their logo from the stars being right side up to the stars being upside down. Coincided with the coming on the scene of George W. Bush and Karl Rove. Very strange. I think they need an exorcism. Let's exercise them. Here's the exorcism. Number one, end the Bush tax cuts. Number two, end the Bush wars. And number three, end the crazy notion that corporations are people and that money is speech and that the rich can buy our nation. If we did that, we might bring the Republican Party back to sanity, back to its Dwight Eisenhower roots, back to the days when they actually could have an opposite opinion from the Democrats, but honestly broker solutions and situations and have reasonable conversations. Exorcisms for the Republican Party. Good idea.
The Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution states excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. In a confidential report issued in July 2004 and leaked to the New York Times in November 2004, Red Cross inspectors accused the U.S. military of using humiliating acts, solitary confinement, temperature extremes, use of forced positions against prisoners. The inspectors concluded that the construction of such a system, whose stated purpose is the production of intelligence, cannot be considered other than an intentional system of cruel, unusual and degrading treatment and a form of torture. The United States government has reportedly rejected the Red Cross findings.
This morning I signed 3 executive orders. First, I can say without exception or equivocation that the United States will not torture. Second, we will close the Guantanamo Bay detention camp and determine how to deal with those who have been held there. And third, we will immediately undertake a comprehensive review to determine how to hold and try terrorism suspects to best protect our nation and the rule of law. The world needs to understand that America will be unyielding in its defense of its security and relentless in its pursuit of those who would carry out terrorism or threaten the United States. And that's why in this twilight struggle we need a durable framework. The orders that I signed today should send an unmistakable signal that our actions in defense of liberty will be just as our cause, and that we, the people, will uphold our fundamental values as vigilantly as we protect our security. Once again, America's moral example must be the bedrock and the beacon of our global leadership.
Nearly 2 years after signing the order to close Guantanamo, the Obama administration admits it's not much closer to doing so.
I don't know the answer to when it's going to happen. I know that remains the president's goal.
The latest obstacle put in place on Wednesday, a congressional ban on moving the remaining Guantanamo detainees to the U.S. for any reason at least through 2011. As the group Human Rights Watch puts it, that means detainees won't soon be facing charges in federal court on terror charges. HRW says the delay could hurt prosecutors' chances of winning convictions in those cases. The ban is tucked inside a military funding bill which the president has to sign. The move comes several months after Congress first passed a measure that blocked the move of detainees to a prison in the United States. And Attorney General Eric Holder is still facing pressure to drop his plans to put the alleged mastermind of the September 11th attacks on trial in New York City. Some want the administration to try all detainees in military tribunals at Guantanamo, a move the administration doesn't want to make. The administration also admits there are some detainees they'll never be able to try, given that the evidence against them was obtained by torture.
I've said repeatedly that America doesn't torture, and I'm going to make sure that we don't torture. Those are part and parcel of an effort to regain America's moral stature in the world.
As such, the White House is now preparing an executive order that would formalize indefinite detention for those detainees.
I don't think anybody would find it surprising that the president and this administration understand that there are those that have been evaluated by our intelligence community, by our defense infrastructure, and we understand, as the president does, that there are some that will require indefinite detention.
The problem for the president as he begins his third year in office, finding a way to deliver on the promise made in the earliest days of his administration.
The land of the free tortures, it holds people in Guantanamo Bay. Prisoners remain, some with no prospect of trial or release, children, elderly and mentally ill among those wrongfully held. The U.S. military dossiers, obtained by the New York Times and The Guardian, reveal how, alongside the so-called worst of the worst, many prisoners were flown to the Guantanamo cages and held captive for years on the flimsiest grounds, or on the basis of lurid confessions extracted by maltreatment. The 759 Guantanamo files, classified secret, cover almost every inmate since the camp was opened in 2002. More than 2 years after President Obama ordered the closure of the prison, 172 people are still held there. The elite have control of the mainstream media, the entertainment industry, the education system, and the money, but they do not yet have control of the internet. The Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA, is the bill that was being considered by the House of Representatives. The proposed legislation is said to be designed to tackle online piracy, with particular emphasis on illegal copies of films and other forms of media hosted on foreign servers. Why is the American government so concerned about the movie and music industry? These people make enough money. Hollywood accounting refers to the accounting methods used by the movie, video and television industry to budget and record profits for film projects. Expenditures can be inflated to reduce or eliminate the reported profit of the project, thereby reducing the amount which the corporation must pay in royalties or other profit-sharing agreements, as these are based on the net profit. According to Wikipedia, it has been estimated that only about 5% of movies officially show a net profit, and the so-called losers include such blockbuster films as Rain Man, Forrest Gump, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Batman, which all took in huge amounts in box office and video sales. Meaning Hollywood, like so many other corporations, avoid paying tax.
If you want to arrange your tax affairs so you support your pension, you plan effectively for your family, that is one thing, and that is acceptable. But frankly, some of these schemes where people are parking huge amounts of money offshore and taking loans back to just minimize their tax rates, it is not morally acceptable. And I put it like this. You know, think of all those people who work hard, who pay their taxes, and out of that post-tax income save up to go and see Jimmy Carr. He's taking that money and stuffing it into something where he doesn't have to pay taxes. That is not fair. That is not right.
Morally repugnant?
I pick my terms carefully, but it isn't morally right to do that.
Now, a former Swiss banker has handed over what he says is evidence of tax evasion by hundreds of corporations and individuals to the WikiLeaks website. Rudolf Elmer is due to return to Switzerland later this week to face trial for stealing information from the bank. Well, at a news conference, he said he'd handed over the bank details to WikiLeaks because he was concerned about the use of offshore accounts for tax evasion. Well, let's get more from our correspondent, Simon Gompetz. Well, tell us a little bit more about this man, first of all. This story seems to have exploded onto our scenes, and we don't really know too much about him.
Well, Rudolf Elmer managed the branch of a Swiss bank in the Cayman Islands, which is a well-known tax haven, and he's alleging that people have been evading tax, keeping money offshore and not paying interest, paying tax, for instance, on the interest that they get from it. He says that politicians, celebrities have been involved in what he's seen, and he's saying, as a senior banker himself, he's someone that people should sit up and take notice of.
Right.
I have been there, I have done the job, I know what the day-to-day business is, I know how much is documented there and how much is not.
Another possible WikiLeaks wrinkle held on these disks. A former Swiss banker hands over documents to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Documents he says detail attempts by wealthy business leaders and lawmakers to evade tax payments.
This data has been collected due to my whistleblower website, having had contacts with other people. I will not reveal any company names. I will not reveal any high net worth individuals. What I want to do is to hand this over to WikiLeaks.
For its part, WikiLeaks says it is still focused on publishing its cache of some 250,000 diplomatic cables, so it will be some time before this new information is reviewed and posted online.
We will treat this information like all other information we get. So yes, I presume, once we've looked at the data, assuming it's not anomalous, assuming it's like everything else we receive, yes, there will be full revelation.
The Swiss banker says he is doing this to expose the offshore banking system. Assange is on bail following his December arrest on a Swedish extradition warrant. Lately, he has said the flow of leaked documents from his organization will increase. Lee Powell, The Associated Press.
In 2010, Tesco made a profit of £3.4 billion, yet they will still go to great lengths to avoid paying tax. Using complex legal structures put there by the government to help the elite avoid paying the full tax rate, Tesco has avoided stamp duty land tax of about £90 million and £23 million in stamp duty. So that's child labor, borderlining slavery, tax avoidance, price fixing, and now they want work for benefits in Britain.
Every little helps, as they say, so many congratulations.
In February 2011, Barclays reveals its UK corporation tax bill for 2009 was £113 million, amounting to around 2.4% of its £4.6 billion annual profit. In November 2011, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs made deals with Vodafone and investment bank Goldman Sachs, which allowed them to escape paying their full tax bill. £25 billion is the estimated annual cost of tax avoidance, according to 2008 research. £13 billion of this is lost to individuals and £12 billion to the 700 largest corporations in Britain. In November 1995, The Independent reported, Rupert Murdoch's News International has paid virtually no tax in the past 10 years, despite racking up net profits of nearly £1 billion since 1986. The publisher of 4 national titles, including The Times and The Sun, earned £779 million in the year to the end of last June alone, but paid only £8.3 million tax. David Cameron exposed Jimmy Carr as an immoral tax evader. Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation, with 152 subsidiaries in tax havens according to the U.S. government, paid no net UK corporation tax between 1988 and 1999. Next time you watch or read News Corporation's biased, racist, warmongering and propaganda-filled media, claiming people are not sick enough to deserve incapacity benefit, or moaning about Britain's benefit handout culture, remember Rupert Murdoch's hypocritical News Corporation do not even pay tax. Reuters February 23, 2011 reported, Walmart likes to claim that its stores are an economic boon to local communities, said Philip Matera, research director of Good Jobs First and author of the report. But the fact is that the company tries hard to reduce the revenue stream going to state and local governments. Walmart does this, the report notes, through methods such as the following: seeking lucrative property tax abatements, tax increment financing, infrastructure assistance and other forms of economic development subsidies that in recent years have amounted to roughly $70 million annually. Using gimmicks such as deducting rent payments made to itself through a captive real estate investment trust to avoid an estimated $300 million a year in state corporate income tax payments. Tax evasion and avoidance, bank bailouts, and fighting wars in the Middle East cost the world's economy more than benefit payouts to the poor and disabled. The poorest people in Britain and America are being forced to pick up the bill for tax evasion and bank bailouts, and wars in the Middle East that most people in Britain and America are against. According to an analysis by Seth Hanlon, Director of Fiscal Reform at the Center for American Progress, $400 billion to $500 billion in taxes go uncollected every year in the United States because of tax evasion and non-compliance. The biggest cost of all is the wars that our government make people fight. It costs hundreds of billions and it costs lives. The mainstream media insists we must go to war with Iraq, Afghanistan and Libya to save the people from these terrible dictators that nearly every oil-rich nation has. How have the British and American government managed to convince people that despite up to 15 million children dying of starvation and preventable diseases every year, our best foreign policy is to declare war on terrorism in the Middle East in the name of human rights?
Today we can definitively say that the Gaddafi regime has come to an end. The last major regime strongholds have fallen. The new government is consolidating the control over the country, and one of the world's longest-serving dictators is no more. 1 year ago, the notion of a free Libya seemed impossible. But then the Libyan people rose up and demanded their rights. And when Gaddafi and his forces started going city to city, town by town, to brutalize men, women, and children, the world refused to stand idly by. Faced with the potential of mass atrocities and a call for help from the Libyan people, the United States and our friends and allies stopped Gaddafi's forces in their tracks. A coalition that included the United States, NATO, and Arab nations persevered through the summer to protect Libyan civilians. And meanwhile, the courageous Libyan people fought for their own future and broke the back of the regime. So this is a momentous day in the history of Libya. Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table, children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father, parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace, nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts.
Why don't Barack Obama, David Cameron, the European Union, or the United Nations declare war on third world poverty? The answer is simple: they are funded for and therefore controlled by massive corporations, banks and the media. There is no financial profit in getting the people of the third world out of poverty. Therefore the corporations, some of whom already exploit the third world with child labor and slavery, they have no interest in helping the third world. They would rather exploit and make a profit from them. If people stop shopping at these places in protest, and stop buying their products, these corporations would be forced to change. They may not care about human rights or helping struggling countries, but one thing these people do care about is money. According to the charity Child Poverty Action Group, there are 3.6 million children living in poverty in the UK today. That's 27% of children, or more than 1 in 4, and under current government policies, child poverty is projected to rise from 2013 with an expected 300,000 more children living in poverty by 2016. This upward trend is expected to continue with 4.2 million children projected to be living in poverty by 2020. According to the charity Feeding America, in 2010, 48.8 million Americans lived in food-insecure households, 32.6 million adults and 16.2 million children. In 2009, 15.5 million, 20.7%, children under the age of 18 were in poverty. Our governments evidently do not even care about poverty in their home countries, let alone the rest of the world. They are dumbing down society, using the education system, the entertainment industry and the mainstream media. The music industry is corrupt, it promotes violence, drugs, and sex. Lady Gaga, Rihanna, Nicki Minaj, Miley Cyrus, Beyoncé, Katy Perry and Britney Spears are all massive role models to our youth, yet they promote sex. Rihanna strips on family TV shows, and they act like absolute whores to their young fan base. The mainstream media presents disgusting, talentless whores like Katie Price and Paris Hilton as people to look up to. It is deliberate corruption and stupefying of our youth and the masses, in order to keep themselves in control, and keep the masses ignorant, and easy to control. But they have a problem. The internet is exposing them.
There are so many great things that the internet does and has to offer, but at the same time, Kira, as you know, there is this dark side where anyone's enemy can take something nasty and post it on the internet, and maybe it doesn't rise to the level as it did with Shirley Sherrod, but it still gets out there among a certain community and does damage to that person's reputation. Imagine what would have happened if we hadn't taken a look at what happened with Shirley Sherrod and plumbed the depths further and found out that what had been posted on the internet was not, in fact, reflective of what she said. Would she still be without a job? Would her reputation still be ruined? That to some degree, is the effect of what many people might consider to be a wild west of the internet, where anybody can post anything they want about anyone. Andrew Keene is the author of The Cult of the Amateur: How Blogs, MySpace, YouTube, and other user-generated media are killing the American economy, the culture, and our values. Here's what he says about this idea that people can post whatever they want about anyone, and many times, probably more times than not, get away with it.
What I think it reflects is a certain sort of paranoia about media, an obsession with conspiracy, a kind of a lunacy that reflects us, an extremism, a bitterness, but also a degree of responsibility. I think this case is interesting because it shows the worst of the internet, in the sense that someone printed a lie or published a lie, which then was virally spread and almost ruined her life. But then part of the internet, and also mainstream media guys like you, came to the rescue. And you sorted the case out. You showed that it was a lie. You revealed the fact, the reality, the truth, which was actually the very opposite of what was published.
But, John, we can't always do that. I mean, there's going to have to be a point in time where these people have to be held accountable. How about all these bloggers that blog anonymously? They say rotten things about people, and they're actually given credibility, which is crazy. They're a bunch of cowards. They're just people seeking attention. So what does this guy propose that we can do about it?
Well, what Andrew talked about with me was this idea of a gatekeeper, but there are huge First Amendment rights that come into play here, freedom of speech and all of that.
You know what's extreme? Taking what he did and smearing the whole internet with it, as if everybody online is some sort of weirdo and who should have no credibility. You know who's online? Your mom, okay? Your daughter, your son, your aunt, your uncle. We're all online. I mean, what, these guys live in, what, 1948? And they're like, oh, what is this internet in a series of tubes? Oh, here they smear people on their lunacy. Oh, what would have happened if the mainstream media hadn't ridden to the rescue? Here's what would have happened. 28 other blogs would have countered with the evidence. And then you guys would have figured it out 2 weeks later and then run the story, maybe. Look, give credit to where credit is due. CNN broke that story, which they don't often do, but they did a good job with it. But to come in here and do the smear job is ridiculous. And by the way, you know who's larger online? Liberals are larger than conservatives. Why are they getting smeared for something the conservatives did? Because these guys aren't thinking, and they're worried, right? They're worried about their job. They get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to read what's in that prompter, right? They're news actors, and they pretend here like they're like the upstanding news people. Well, what did you do when Bush was in charge? What are you doing when Obama's in charge? How many stories have you broken? I give you credit for this one. Did you break any important stories about Iraq? Did you break any important stories about Afghanistan? In fact, you get mad when WikiLeaks break the story. You've forgotten what journalism is, and you're going to go complain about people online. It's because they continually embarrass you, usually by getting stuff you didn't even get.
All right, let's dig deeper. My next guest calls the Pentagon shooting suspect the latest example of a suicidal warrior in an anti-government movement that's spreading since President Obama took office. John Avalon is the author of Wingnuts: How the Lunatic Fringe is Hijacking America. He's also a senior political writer for The Daily Beast. It's interesting, John, because there has been effort to paint this guy as a right-wing fanatic, but you say this is less about left-right politics, more about conspiracy theories gone awry.
That's exactly right. If you look at what this guy's been posting about on his website, he's not screaming about President Obama per se. He is angry at the government. He's talking about 9/11 conspiracy theories. He's talking about Dick Cheney more than he is President Obama. He's talking about even the JFK conspiracy theories around that assassination. So what you've got here is clearly a guy who's very mentally disturbed, but has been drinking really deeply of what I call fright-wing politics. It's way beyond left and right. It's really that murky ground of conspiracy theories that's been proliferating on the internet and inciting some people to take it a step too far towards violence.
I do think the reaction to this, though, says a lot about politics today and the state of our country and the partisan nature of it. I mean, when you Google this guy, you find people out there today claiming that he's everything from a Tea Party libertarian to a Democrat to a right-wing Republican.
Yeah. You know, make him a political football before the body's cold. It is a symptom of the ugliness in our politics. It's also a symptom of a larger trend. Remember, last year in April, you know, the death count began. We had 3 Pittsburgh police officers murdered by a conspiracy theorist. We had 2 Florida sheriff's deputies. The Southern Poverty Law Center came out with a report just this week saying that there had been a 3-fold increase in the number of militia groups just in the first year of the Obama administration alone. So this is a growing trend, this Hatriot movement of people who believe it's patriotic to hate the government. It's troubling, and we should really all connect the dots. This guy may be an outlier in some instances, but it's side of a growing trend that should be a real wake-up call to all Americans.
Isn't it possible, though, that he's just incredibly mentally unstable? I mean, there are people who are schizophrenic out there. I mean, we know he's mentally unstable. We know his family has been, you know, trying to get him help for years. They've been wrestling with this. You know, there have always been crazy people who gravitated, if they have schizophrenia, who gravitate toward conspiracy theories. It doesn't necessarily... I mean, does it necessarily tie into what is going on in the country at large?
Well, what we know about the writings he's made online is that it does fit some of the types, some of the tropes that we've seen throughout the first year of Obama in particular. A lot of the conspiracy theories. Of course, 9/11 conspiracy theory goes back to the Bush era. But this anti-government fervor, which has really been stoked on the internet with particular intensity in the last year, he does follow. But it's a mistake to try to shoehorn him into any one ideology or to make him fit any existing narrative, especially a partisan political narrative. What's very clear is that this is a very disturbed individual who's drunk very deeply out a lot of the hate and paranoia that's being sold on the internet by a lot of these conspiracy entrepreneurs. And that's what happens when you use hate as a cheap and easy recruiting tool, but it can lead to violence, especially when the folks who are drinking it are kind of unstable to begin with.
Well, my heart goes out not only to the families of the officers involved who were killed, but also who were hit,
yes,
and wounded, but the family of this guy who's been trying to deal with his mental illness for a long time. John, I appreciate it. Thanks, John.
That's right. Thank you.
Why do people have a problem believing CNN and other mainstream media? This archive footage shows former CNN reporter Charles Yako covering the 1990 Persian Gulf War. The footage looks fake, even the trees look fake, and the acting is terrible. A clip was leaked by CNN staff that clearly shows it was filmed in a studio, probably somewhere in America. Watch and decide for yourself.
We are now led to understand that there are also firings in another city in Saudi Arabia. CNN's Carl Rochelle is here with me. He just came up. Carl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There was a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. I'd say it was... My apologies for that. He's putting on a gas mask. There hasn't been any gas dropped here that we could tell. You smell anything? No. You may smell some of the fumes from a missile exhaust going off. The missiles use a rocket, a cordite, some sort of burning. We just heard a little thump just then. But I have to apologize for that. I caught a whiff of something and felt momentarily dizzy. You're more experienced in military affairs than I am, but it might have been a little gas from the rocket exhaust. Well, it wasn't anything. A lot of people have the respirators on just in case. And again, you run to get down here. You, in my case, jumped out of bed hearing the air raid warning go on. You run down 3 flights of stairs to get out of here. It's probably 100 yards. You hyperventilate a little bit, and you're nervous.
One thing we have to point out, just so people won't think people are panicking, most people are in their shelters. They've taken cover in their shelters, and in the time we've been in Saudi Arabia, I've not seen any evidence of panic in the streets or people running around. People are not exactly taking this as a matter of course, but there's been no wholesale panic or anything. People are taking orderly precautions to deal with
Conspiracy theories are all over the internet. WikiLeaks is releasing information that the government would rather you not know, and would have been able to contain if it were not for the internet. It all started when so-called 9/11 conspiracy theories started to get big on YouTube. The media attack anyone who dares question 9/11 as a paranoid lunatic that is a danger to society. But the official story holds up about as well as the Twin Towers and the Solomon Building did. 9/11 paved the way for the war on terror, according to the mainstream media. Lunatics, fanatics, paranoid, low self-esteem, mentally ill people with nothing better to do than cause trouble, are spreading lies around the internet. The truth is, the government's evil actions have started these conspiracy theories spreading uncontrollably over the internet, pointing out the corruption, lies, media manipulation, corporation tax avoidance, the wars, and how civil liberties, freedom of information, and freedom of speech are being taken away from people that are too busy watching the talentless. Simon Cowell telling talentless people that they are talentless. If the mainstream media was not so corrupt and full of propaganda and lies in the first place, people would still have some trust in them. The fact is the mainstream media is too obsessed with things like Ryan Giggs and Tiger Woods' sex lives and not interested in breaking decent, real news stories, and the internet shows them for the corrupt fools they really are. Internet censorship is top priority of the elite, Hollywood and the mainstream media for multiple reasons. Internet censorship would allow tax-evading Hollywood bigger profits, bigger tax bills to evade. Mainstream media like News Corporation and CNN will have almost complete control of what you read and watch on the news, making it easy for them to propagate and even hide the truth. They want internet censorship so they can manipulate the internet like they already do the mainstream media. And their evil deeds, oil wars and poverty, will be propagated instead of reported. British and American governments have spent years condemning China, Russia, and North Korea for censorship, a lack of human rights and propaganda, but now we have clueless, dangerous pricks like David Cameron pushing for internet censorship, claiming internet censorship is needed to combat terrorism, piracy and to protect children. If David Cameron wants to protect children, he should stop Tesco and Primark from exploiting some of the poorest children in the world, or fund aid to Africa and other starving nations instead of funding wars in Libya and Iraq. Stop cutting benefits for the poorest in Britain to fund wars and the Olympics, and allowing ridiculous bank charges of up to £300 a week just for having no money to pay bills. The only people Cameron wants to protect is the City of London. Unlike David Cameron, Barack Obama given us genuine hope.
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
But unfortunately Barack Obama is too busy fighting wars in Libya to help the poorest, like David Cameron and the City of London. Barack Obama is also only interested in helping Wall Street. It's no coincidence Obama and Cameron agree on nearly every major decision made. They are both puppets of the banks, media and corporations like Britain. America's poverty has worsened. Median household income in the United States is down 7.8% since December 2007 after adjusting for inflation. When Barack Obama entered the White House, the number of long-term unemployed workers in the United States was approximately 2.6 million. Today, that number is sitting at 5.6 million in 1950. More than 80% of all men in the United States had jobs. Today, less than 65% of all men in the United States have jobs. The total home mortgage debt in the United States is now about 5 times larger than it was just 20 years ago. Total consumer debt in the United States has increased by a whopping 1,700% since 1971. Back in 1980, less than 30% of all jobs in the United States were low-income jobs. Today, more than 40% of all jobs in the United States are low-income jobs. Since the beginning of 2009, the average price of a gallon of gasoline in the United States has increased by more than 90%. In 2001, the U.S. national debt was less than $6 trillion. Today, it is over $15 trillion and it is increasing by about $150 million every single hour. Statistics from the Independent Journal Review. But the world has bigger problems than this.
South Korean authorities say they plan to crack down on the illegal smuggling of so-called human flesh capsules. The pills contain parts of human fetuses or infants and are believed to be sold as stamina enhancement drugs. But customs officials say they can cause serious health problems. Al Jazeera's Wayne Hay is in Seoul.
South Korean customs officials say the first case of someone trying to import the so-called human flesh capsules to South Korea arose in August last year. Since then, they say there have been 35 cases of people either trying to bring the capsules in through airports into South Korea or sending them via post from various areas in China. So now the customs officials are saying they are going to have a crackdown. They are going to increase security measures at those airports, in particular when certain flights are arriving from China, so they can try to prevent any more capsules arriving in South Korea.
Patrick is dying. He suffers from the mysterious nodding disease, so called because victims suffer seizures that often start with nodding of the head. He's 13 years old but looks much younger, his mental and physical development stunted. His control of his body and mind steadily slips away. His father Martin doesn't know what to do. Patrick's 2 teenage sisters also suffered from the disease. They're both already dead.
He won't survive. 3 of my children had the disease. 2 already died. He won't last much longer.
In this village, almost all the children have the disease. It's only found in certain areas in northern Uganda, the Republic of South Sudan and Tanzania. The cause is unknown. Some researchers say it's connected to river blindness, a parasitic disease transmitted to people by flies that live in the rivers flowing through the affected areas. Others think it could be linked to the region's conflicts.
Britain offered more help today, £25 million to the starving of Somalia.
The famine is affecting large parts of eastern Africa. Many Somali refugees have fled to Kenya, but thousands of its own people are also desperate for help. Our Africa correspondent Rohit Kashru has been to Turkana in northern Kenya. His report on the famine's forgotten victims contains some upsetting scenes.
2 months without food has reduced Lamaidi to this. He's so weak and hungry that he struggles to recall his name. Hunger, hunger, he says. His animals have gone and he believes that drought will kill him too. The people of Turkana are known for their striking beauty and rich tradition. Many are from remote pastoralist communities where it's difficult for help to reach them. Here, some is getting through, and word spreads that food is being handed out to children. Akiba hasn't eaten for 2 weeks. He walked for 6 days to get here after his father died from starvation. Finally, he's fed. He can barely lift his bowl of porridge. But he's overwhelmed by the food. The sight of it, the smell of it. It takes time, but eventually he eats. It may have saved his life. Children strong enough to carry weaker siblings have come from many miles away. Unlike the refugee camps, the suffering here is spread across hundreds of miles. It is not so easy for the world to see.
The world needs a hero. On January 29, 2010, the Daily Mail reported that Bill Gates made the largest ever single charitable donation when he pledged $10 billion to develop and distribute vaccines. The Microsoft founder hopes the money, to be spent over the next 10 years through his foundation, will save the lives of more than 8 million children in the world's poorest countries. He said we must make this the decade of vaccines. Vaccines already save and improve millions of lives. Innovation will make it possible to save more children than ever before. It sounds very generous of him. However, if I was starving with no medication or clean water to drink, vaccinations would be the last thing on my wish list. $10 billion would buy a lot of food, water, medication and shelter.
Microsoft founder Bill Gates has committed over $10 billion over the next decade to deliver vaccines to the world's poorest countries. Gates made the pledge while speaking at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, saying that this year needs to be the decade of vaccines. He said the commitment more than doubled the $4.5 billion his charity foundation has already given to vaccine research already.
$10 billion over the next 10 years to make it the year of the vaccines. What does that mean exactly?
Well, over this decade, we believe unbelievable progress can be made, both inventing new vaccines and making sure they get out to all the children who need them. We could cut the number of children who die every year from about 9 million to half of that if we have success on it. And the benefits there in terms of reducing sickness, reducing the population growth, it really allows the society a chance to take care of itself once you've made that intervention.
There's been a lot of scrutiny of vaccines recently, specifically childhood vaccines. There's been a lot of news about, is there a connection with autism, for example? What do you make of all that? Dr. Wakefield wrote a paper about this saying that he thought there was a connection. And there was lower vaccination rates as a result for a period of time in Britain than the United States. What are your thoughts?
Well, Dr. Wakefield has been shown used absolutely fraudulent data. He had a financial interest in some lawsuits. He created a fake paper. The journal allowed it to run. All the other studies were done, showed no connection whatsoever, again and again and again. And so it's an absolute lie that has killed thousands of kids, because the mothers who heard that lie, many of them didn't have their kids take either pertussis or measles vaccine, and their children are dead today. And so, the people who go and engage in those anti-vaccine efforts, they kill children. It's a very sad thing, because these vaccines are important.
After discussing his philanthropic work, Jon Stewart of The Daily Show called Bill Gates badman. Apparently Bill Gates is working proactively towards eradicating polio worldwide and improving the U.S. education system. The only thing I can see Bill Gates has in common with Batman is they both have ridiculously expensive cars. Bill Gates is more like Dr. Evil. On Wednesday, August 13, 2003, The Guardian reported, ever since Andrew Wakefield's report first suggested a link between MMR and autism in 1998, there has been a growing lack of confidence in government-recommended vaccinations. MMR was introduced in 1988, and by 1996, 92% of children receive the vaccine. Now that number has fallen to 79% and as low as 65% in some parts of the country. The governments of the world constantly prioritize money over human rights, and there is massive amounts of money involved in vaccinations. The MMR jab cost $52 a shot. The manufacturers of the vaccinations would cease to exist if they were to acknowledge that there could be dangerous side effects to some vaccinations. How had people meant to trust the government on vaccinations for their children when the government lied to people on a daily basis? The truth is, the masses are not the problem. The world is not overpopulated. In fact, Australia's landmass is 2,968,000 square miles and there are nearly 640 acres in a square mile, meaning there is close to 1,899,520,000 acres, meaning every person in the world could live in Australia and have quarter of an acre of land for growing food. The world has bigger problems than world population going out of control, bigger problems than Islamic fundamentalists, and global warming. The biggest problem the world has is greed. Every year millions of children starve to death. Every year corporations like Apple, Tesco, Walmart, and Walt Disney make billions. They avoid paying tax and use child labor. The British government spent over £20 billion on wars in the Middle East. The American government have spent over $850 billion on war since 9/11. Bill Gates, America's richest man, has a personal balance sheet larger than the gross domestic product (GDP) of 140 countries. Warren Buffett has a fortune the size of North Korea's economy at $40 billion. The royal family in Britain has £44 billion according to The Sun. The Bank of England and their secret owners have stacks of gold bars worth £156 billion stored in an old canteen deep below the streets of the capital. This year Forbes counted 1,226 billionaires, an all-time high. At a record $4.6 trillion, the group's combined net worth is up 2%. The average worth of a Forbes billionaire is $3.7 billion. If these billionaires, that the media tell us are like superheroes, put just 1/4 of their wealth and profit towards fighting poverty, and the governments of the world put the billions they spend on fighting and causing terror, and bailing out banks, towards eradicating poverty, they would surely be fighting a war they could win. The royal family in Britain are like parasites. They spend £3 billion a year on security alone, that could feed millions of people and save lives. The media present the British royal family as heroes. They accuse people that stand against the royals as being unpatriotic, despite the fact the British royal family is in fact German.
Look at me, kids! I was born in Croydon! I was educated at Liverpool Primary School! I've got a girlfriend called Doris! I know the words to all 3 verses of God Save the King!
4 verses!
4 verses! 4 verses! I meant 4 verses! Look, I'm as British as Queen Victoria!
So your father's German, you're half German, and you married a German?
more than a third of Britain's land is still in the hands of a tiny group of aristocrats, according to a survey by Country Life magazine, thought to be the most extensive survey of its type undertaken since 1872. The top private landowner, not just in Britain but Europe, is the Duke of Buccleuch and Queensberry, whose 4 sumptuous estates cover 240,000 acres in England and Scotland. A group of 36,000 individuals, that is only 0.6% of the population, own about 50% of all rural land in Britain. The richest 1% of Americans now own 40% of the nation's wealth. 25 years ago, the top 1% owned 33% of national wealth. The richest 1% of Americans take home almost a quarter of national income today. In 1976 they took home just 9%. Despite all these statistics that prove the top 1% are getting richer, the super-rich are paying less tax and corporations are killing local businesses, providing dead-end jobs, exploiting and profiting from people, sometimes even children in the third world. The top 1% blame the masses, the media blames benefit claimants, immigrants, and anyone but the banks. The royal family and the Wars News Corporation have spent years propagating. The elite cannot be blamed for everything. People throw away 3.6 tons of fruit each year in England and Wales. Research done by the Waste Resources Action Programme suggests. The research found that salad, fruit and bread were most commonly wasted, and 60% of all dump food was untouched. Americans waste 96 billion pounds of food every year.
Is going to crash, and it's going to fall pretty hard because markets are ruled right now by fear. Investors and the big money, the smart money, I'm talking about the big funds, the hedge funds, the institutions, they don't buy this rescue plan. They basically, they know the market is toast. They know the stock market is finished. The euro, as far as they're concerned, they don't really care. They're moving their money away to safer assets like treasury bonds, 30-year bonds, and the US dollar. So it's not going to work.
We keep hearing that whatever the politicians are suggesting, and admittedly it's all been rather woolly so far, isn't right. Can you pin down exactly what would keep investors happy, make them feel more confident?
That's a tough one. Personally, it doesn't matter. See, I'm a trader. I don't really care about that kind of stuff. I go with what if I see an opportunity to make money, I go with that. So for most traders, it's not about, we don't really care that much how they're going to fix the economy, how they're going to fix the whole situation. Our job is to make money from it. And personally, I've been dreaming of this moment for 3 years. I had a confession, which is I go to bed every night, I dream of another recession. I dream of another moment like this. Why? Because people don't seem to maybe remember, but the 30s depression, the depression in the 30s, wasn't just about a market crash. There were some people who were prepared to make money from that crash. And I think anybody can do that. It isn't just for some people in the elite. Anybody can actually make money. It's an opportunity. When the market crashes, when the euro and the big stock markets crash, if you know what to do, if you have the right plan to set up, you can make a lot of money from this. For example, Hedging strategies is one. Then investing in bonds, treasury bonds, that sort of stuff.
If you could see the people around me, jaws have collectively dropped at what you've just said. I mean, we appreciate your candour, however, it doesn't help the rest of us, does it, or the rest of the Eurozone?
I would say this, listen, I would say this to everybody who's watching this. This economic crisis is like a cancer. If you just wait and wait thinking this is going to go away, just like a cancer, it's going to grow and it's going to be too late. What I would say to everybody is get prepared. This is not a time right now to wishful thinking the government is going to sort things out. The governments don't rule the world. Goldman Sachs rules the world. Goldman Sachs does not care about this rescue package, neither does the big funds. So actually, what I would actually tell people, I want to help people. People can make money from this. It isn't just traders. What they need to do is learn about how to make money from a downward market. The first thing people should do is protect their assets, protect what they have. Because in less than 12 months, my prediction is the savings of millions of people is going to vanish. And this is just the beginning. So I would say be prepared and act now. The biggest risk people can take right now is not acting.
Alessia Rastani, thank you very much for talking to us.
Do you dream about the economy at night?
I try not to.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
18 minutes past 11.
If people in the developed world watched and read the real news, mainstream and alternative news like Press TV, Russia Today, Associated Press and others, instead of reading gossip about celebrities and watching mind-numbing rubbish like The X Factor, Big Brother, and soap operas, it would be harder for the government to hide or propagate the truth. If the masses boycotted Tesco, Walmart, Apple, Walt Disney and all the other corporations that use child labor that borderlines slavery, these corporations and their massive lack of respect for human rights would cease to exist. Secret societies have infiltrated governments and media around the world. They have a lot of power and yet their agendas are kept secret. As long as the world is run by secret societies and corporations, there will always be conspiracy theories. According to the BBC, there are 6 million Freemasons around the world. The first U.S. president, George Washington, and another leading American revolutionary, Benjamin Franklin, were Masons. Today a significant proportion of the royal household are members, and the Duke of Kent is Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England. Masonic rules demand that members support each other and keep each other's lawful secrets, which has led to conspiracy theories of corruption. The Grand Master of the Freemason movement in Guernsey hit out at the publication of a list of lodge members in the island. The list was posted on an internet forum and includes the names of a number of former and present politicians, jurats and bailiffs. Provincial Grand Master David Hodgetts said the publication of the list raised issues regarding data protection laws. Massive billion-pound corporations lobbying and media corporations propagating the news for personal gain, and secret societies, like the Freemasons, infiltrating and controlling governments around the world undermine the right to vote.
President. Senator from Vermont is recognized. Mr. President, there is a war going on in this country, and I'm not referring to the war in Iraq or the war in Afghanistan. I'm talking about a war being waged by some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in this country against the working families of the United States of America, against the disappearing and shrinking middle class of our country. The reality is that many of the nation's billionaires are on the warpath. They want more, Their greed has no end, and apparently there is very little concern for our country or for the people of this country if it gets in the way of the accumulation of more and more wealth and more power. Mr. President, in the year 2007, the top 1% of all income earners in the United States made 23.5% of all income. Top 1% earned 23.5% of all income, more than the entire bottom 50%. That's apparently not enough. The percentage of income going to the top 1% nearly tripled since the 1970s. In the mid-1970s, the top 1% earned about 8% of all income. In the 1980s, that figure jumped to 14%. In the late 1990s, that 1% earned about 19%. And today, as the middle class collapses, top 1% earns 23.5% of all income, more than the bottom 50%. Today, if you can believe it, the top 1/10 of 1% earns about 12 cents of every dollar earned in America. So we talk about a lot of things on the floor of the Senate, but somehow we forget to talk about the reality of who is winning in this economy and who is losing. And it is very clear to anyone who spends 2 minutes studying the issue that the people on top are doing extraordinarily well at the same time as the middle class is collapsing and poverty is increasing.